Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first official podcast of the State of Baseball podcast. Just so everyone knows, it is 12/29, the date when this is being recorded. So I'm not sure when this will actually be uploaded to anything. So when I talk in reference to any moves, it will be from the reference of the 29th of December. Just so we know, we're gonna get right into it. Basically, talking about just what the Padres have done, starting with the first big move they made, Blake Snell. Blake Snell, obviously a former Cy Young winner. A big thing is that he has a 3-year, $39 million contract, which is obviously such an incredible value contract for such a great pitcher. Really makes a lot of sense for the Padres. I don't know a lot about the prospects that they gave up, but apparently they're not very high level. But knowing the Rays, they'll probably end up being very good. But the Padres, with the team they have, definitely are willing to make those sacrifices at this point in their building process. The next move they made, the only non-trade actually, was for Kim. Don't know a lot about him, but I believe he hit 30 home runs in Japan last year. Obviously, that's incredible, but it might take some time for him to adjust. He doesn't really have much of a role, I feel like, on this team, considering they're filled at shortstop and third base with Machado and Tatis. Obviously, two of the better players in these games, but willing to figure that he'll fill like a utility role and probably excel at it. And obviously, the last big move they made was trading for Yu Darvish, which is now official. It just became official. This was very interesting to me. It kind of shows that the Cubs are pretty close to tearing it down. And it makes sense considering I can't really remember a batter in the lineup last year who bat over 250 when they were playing in the playoffs. So that team was held by their pitching, but clearly they're getting rid of that. And I'm sure many moves will come in the future. We'll talk about that as well. Now, one of the interesting things to me is why they made the trades for these two guys when they had to give up prospects but not sign a guy like Trevor Bauer. So you have to assume it's because of the contracts. Snell and Yu Darvish's contracts are very, I would say, team friendly, especially Snell. Another thing with Bauer is probably the years on the contract, which might have been the biggest thing. The Bauer is definitely getting at least 5 years on his contract, and that might be outside the Padres' windows for wanting to sign a pitcher to big money, which in the modern day makes sense. I certainly don't like giving big contracts anymore. They typically don't work out, so it makes sense why they wanted to do it like this. Really does. Now, what's interesting is now how they're in the West with the Dodgers. These two teams are probably going to be stacked up with each other for at least the next 5 years. They're kind of plenty of good matchups in the West. Right now, I definitely have to give the edge to the Dodgers in the West, considering the form coming off a World Series championship. But listen, Padres will probably make another move or two, and it's gonna be probably a flip of a coin who ends up winning that division. I'm gonna move on to how this affects. First of all, we'll start with the Cubs. Like I said, the Cubs are pretty clearly packing it in. I'm expecting more trades for them. We keep on hearing a lot about Chris Bryant, who probably should be a pretty big target for the Nationals. Nationals, who just traded for Josh Bell, really still need another big bat in the lineup. The only problem for the Cubs here is you're selling low on Bryant, which nothing they can really do about that, unfortunately. But it's kind of tough if you're the Cubs, having to trade him after a down year. But that's why I suspect they'll hold on to Rizzo this offseason and try to build up some of his value. But obviously, Bryant will probably be their first priority to move. Again, probably would be a great fit with the Nationals, and that lineup, man, if they bring in Bryant, that lineup could be dangerous. Turner at the front with Soto, Bell, and Bryant in the middle. You're going to need to watch back out for them. Now they're onto the Rays. This is kind of a typical Rays thing to do if you really think about it, but I love the Rays, but I'm a little nervous about them now. I'll tell you why. They were really carried to the playoffs by their big three of pitchers. Morton, who is gone now, Snell, who is also gone out, and Glass now, who wasn't that great in the playoffs, honestly. I love him, but it's just the truth. But I expect him to pitch better. Hopefully he gets a good, full, healthy season, and he could really do some great things if that happens. But they're going to really depend on him next year. Now, the Rays also followed this trade by trading Jose Alvarado to the Phillies in a 3-team trade. This is very interesting for the Phillies, trading for two of the best trading teams ever, honestly. The Dodgers and the Rays win 90% of their trades. Meanwhile, the Phillies lose about 95% of their trades. Key thing being that Hembree and Workman trade they made last at the trade deadline, my bad, which is absolutely horrible for them, but I digress. This is kind of a move the Phillies had to make. Certainly a possible high upside move with Alvarado, who has incredible stuff. Those freaking 100 from the left side. You don't see that every day, so definitely a good move by the Phillies. The problem is with the Phillies, this is the make it or break it year for the Phillies. If they don't make the playoffs this year, they have to tear it down, which is kind of sound crazy to people, but they honestly could be the worst team in that division, and they have a lot of possibly bad contracts. And what worries me is if they re-sign Realmuto, which it kind of sounds like they are, that's another big contract. And if they can't make the playoffs after bringing him back, then what does it tell you about that team? It means it's just not built to work. And the problem is in the rebuild, they just brought Dave Dombrowski in, the king of trading the farm. He and rebuild do not work in the same sentence. You saw that with the Red Sox when he was fired less than a year after winning a World Series. So, are they going to move? If they don't make the playoffs, will they end up moving on from him and trying to rebuild? I doubt it, honestly. But I think it's what they should do unless they end up coming close. The problem with the Phillies, again, they don't even have any prospects. Their top two guys are Bohm and Spencer Howard, but they're in the majors already, and Bohm is already good, and even with that, they couldn't really scrape the playoffs last year. So, tells you in the dire state that I believe they're in. But if they could fix the bullpen up, they have potential. Certainly have potential to make the playoffs. The problem is, these NL East is going to be very competitive. Obviously, the Braves nearly made the World Series. They are a great team, even better with the addition of Charlie Morton. Mets, you never really know with the Mets, but at the end of the day, they have some good pitching and may not make the playoffs, but they'll give any team a run for their money. I'll certainly say that. Marlins, one of my favorite teams last year. They are on the up. Led by Sixto Sanchez, who, of course, the Phillies traded for JT Realmuto, which is looking like one of the 95% of trades that work out horribly for them. So, Phillies are certainly in a tough spot. It's a big make it or break it year for them. So last thing I'm going to actually say is, as of right now, Rays are looking to trade Kevin Kiermaier, it seems like. A lot of reports of the Red Sox being interested, but I don't really think that makes sense. If you go from Jackie Bailey Jr. to Kevin Kiermaier, it's not really much of a difference. They're virtually the same player. Jackie's probably a little better than him offensively. Jackie was about league average. Often joke that I call Kevin Kiermaier the designated fielder. And kind of rightfully so. He batted about 200 last year. So, if I'm the Red Sox, I stay away. But I can certainly see how some other teams are interested in him. It kind of makes sense that the Rays want to move on from him because he has probably one of the bigger contracts on their team with not much offensive production. So, which is not ideal. Anyway, just to wrap up here. The Padres are going to try and make this the West their division for the next 5 years, but it'll be interesting to see if the Dodgers make any moves to respond or if they just kind of stay where they are with their already incredible team. They could really do either and probably still be World Series favorites again. So that's really all for today. Just kind of a quick recap on the last couple days in the MLB. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully I make these better as I go on, but just about no promises with that. So that is the first official State of Baseball podcast. I hope you have a good one.